Most of us are taught to work harder, do more, and chase every opportunity that comes our way. But after years of watching people hustle without getting ahead, I've learned something important. It's not how much you do, but what you do and how you do it that truly sets you apart. This book is about making smarter moves, not just more moves. It's a practical guide for anyone who feels overwhelmed, stuck, or frustrated by busy work that never seems to pay off. If you want to get real results without burning out, Power Moves, 7 Mental Models to Think Like a Strategic Genius will show you how. Inside, you'll discover 7 surprisingly simple ways of thinking that top strategists use to win, at work, in business, and in life. And don't worry, these aren't complicated theories or business buzzwords. Instead, you'll see how to cut through the noise and focus on what really matters, so your effort actually pays off. You'll learn how to build a solid foundation for yourself, making it much easier to take bold steps when it counts. You'll find out how to make decisions faster, how to learn from what happens, and how to spot the obstacles that quietly hold you back, so you can finally do something about them. You'll start to see further ahead, so you avoid the mistakes most people don't see coming, and you'll get comfortable testing new ideas in a way that keeps risk low, so when you're onto something good, you can double down with confidence. Every idea in this book is broken down into simple steps with real-world examples and exercises you can use right away. Whether you're just starting out or looking for an edge in your career, you'll discover practical tools to help you get more from every move you make. My hope is that these pages will help you stop spinning your wheels and start making progress that lasts. You don't need special talent or luck, just the right playbook. If you're ready to think ahead, work smarter, and finally see your hard work pay off, this is where it begins. Your next power move is waiting. Chapter 1, Power Moves. The chess grandmaster stares at the board for exactly 12 seconds, then moves her queen to the center. Her opponent, who has been calculating variations for 20 minutes, suddenly realizes the game is over. Not because of this single move, but because every piece now serves the queen's position. The amateur sees tactics. The master sees leverage. You're playing the wrong game. While you optimize your to-do list and chase productivity hacks, others are rewriting the rules entirely. They're not working harder. They're working from positions of leverage that make their effort compound exponentially. This chapter will show you how to join them. The leverage trap. Most ambitious people fall into the same trap. They mistake motion for progress. You answer every email, attend every meeting, and complete every task with religious devotion. Your calendar is packed, your productivity apps are maxed out, and you feel busy enough to justify your exhaustion. Yet somehow, you're still running in place. The problem isn't your work ethic, it's your leverage ratio. In a world where network effects, automation, and social amplification can turn small inputs into massive outputs, linear effort produces linear results. Meanwhile, your competitors are finding the pressure points that move entire systems with minimal force. Consider the difference between a customer service rep answering 100 emails and a product manager fixing the root cause that eliminates 1,000 future emails. Same intelligence, same hours worked, completely different leverage. The rep optimizes for activity, the manager optimizes for impact. This scattered approach doesn't just limit your upside, it actively sabotages your position. Decision fatigue accumulates as you context switch between dozens of unrelated tasks. Your attention fragments across urgent but unimportant demands. Most dangerously, you surrender tempo control to others, becoming reactive instead of proactive. The cost of staying linear. If you don't shift from linear effort to leverage-based thinking, 3 predictable outcomes await. First, your career plateaus harden into permanent ceilings. Promotions stall because you're seen as a reliable executor, not a strategic force multiplier. Projects loop endlessly because you're solving symptoms, not systems. Your morale decays as you watch others advance with seemingly less effort. Second, costs creep in from every direction. Rework becomes your default mode as you fix problems that could have been prevented. Friction increases as your scattered approach creates bottlenecks. You miss timing windows because you're always catching up, never setting the pace. Your professional brand erodes as you become known for hustle rather than results. Third, and most insidiously, you get trapped in low-leverage roles while others capture the asymmetric upside. The person who controls the distribution channel earns more than the person who creates the content. The person who sets the meeting agenda shapes the decisions more than the person who does the analysis. Position beats effort, and you're fighting from the wrong position. Your strategic transformation. This book will teach you to think and act like a strategic genius through 7 interconnected mental models. By the time you finish reading, you'll be able to identify your 3 center levers and establish a weekly review ritual to protect them. You'll install a daily first force activation routine that seizes initiative before the world imposes its agenda on you. You'll compress your decision-making into a tight 10-10-10 OODA rhythm. 10 minutes to observe key metrics, 10 minutes to orient around the dominant signal, 10 minutes to decide and act. This cadence will let you ship 1 meaningful micro-change daily, creating continuous calibration while your competitors debate in weekly meetings. Most importantly, you'll design your first asymmetric bet, a small experiment with capped downside and stacked exposure that could reset your trajectory entirely. These aren't abstract concepts. They're practical tools that work immediately. The compounding effect. Consistent application of these principles creates a flywheel effect that accelerates over time. Your cycles get shorter, your wins get cleaner, and your optionality expands. Each success opens 3 new doors because you've built a reputation for judgment rather than just execution. People start seeking your opinion before making decisions. Better talent wants to work with you. Capital flows toward your projects because you've demonstrated the ability to see around corners. You become the person who always seems to be early, right, and ready. Eventually, you achieve something remarkable: category tempo control. You announce, others react. You set the rhythm, others adjust. You've moved from playing the game to designing it. The 7 power moves. The transformation happens through 7 sequential capabilities, each building on the last. First, you'll learn to control center, mapping value flows and identifying the minimal set of levers that move everything else. Center control amplifies every subsequent move because effort applied at the hub creates system-wide effects. Next comes strong position, building the buffers, defaults, and credible assets that let you take shots without risking ruin. Position protects your gains and reduces variance, creating the stability needed for aggressive moves. Then you'll own initiative through activation energy rituals and clear kill criteria. Initiative sets tempo and creates learning opportunities that compound over time. Second-order thinking prevents hidden blowback by mapping the ripple effects of your decisions. Fast loops accelerate calibration by compressing your observe, orient, decide, act cycle into a daily rhythm. Bottleneck removal unlocks throughput by focusing improvement efforts where they actually matter. Finally, asymmetric bets harvest convexity by creating a portfolio of small experiments with unlimited upside and limited downside. This sequence isn't arbitrary. Each capability enables the next, creating a coherent operating system for strategic thinking. Winners versus losers. The difference between strategic winners and losers isn't intelligence or effort, it's game selection and sequencing. Winners pick winnable arenas where their advantages compound. Losers accept default games designed by others. Winners ship small and often, creating tight feedback loops that accelerate learning. Losers hoard perfect solutions that never see daylight. Most critically, winners say no to noise so they can say yes to signal. They understand that every commitment is a trade-off, and they optimize for leverage rather than activity. Jeff Bezos exemplifies this thinking with his two-way door framework, making reversible decisions quickly while taking time only on irreversible choices. Toyota's entire production system focuses on bottleneck identification and continuous flow improvement. Serena Williams built points methodically before attempting winners, understanding that position creates power. Your power audit. Here's your first exercise in strategic thinking. List 20 activities that currently consume your time and energy. Tag each one as high, medium, or low on 2 dimensions: impact, how much it moves your key outcomes, and control, how much influence you have over the results. Keep only the high-impact, high-control activities. These are your leverage points. Schedule a daily first force session for one of these items, meaning you'll make progress on it before checking messages or attending meetings. Kill one low-impact activity immediately, regardless of how comfortable or familiar it feels. Review this audit weekly because leverage points shift as you grow. The goal isn't perfection, it's calibration. You're training your judgment to recognize leverage when you see it and to act on it consistently. The path forward. You now understand the fundamental choice facing every ambitious professional. Continue optimizing for activity or start optimizing for leverage. The tools exist, the principles are proven. The only question is whether you'll use them. But knowing the moves isn't enough. You need to understand the deeper game being played. In the next chapter, we'll explore how the most successful people identify and control the center squares that move everything else. Because once you control the center, every other move becomes more powerful. The transformation begins with a single decision. Will you keep playing by the old rules, or will you learn to rewrite them entirely? Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Control Center. The most successful people you know have a secret. They don't work on everything. They work on the things that work on everything else. While you're optimizing 17 different metrics and juggling 43 priorities, they've identified the 3 levers that move their entire world. They've found their center. But what exactly is the center? And why does controlling it matter more than any other strategic move you'll ever make? The geography of influence. Think of your professional life as a network of interconnected nodes. Information flows between them. Money moves along certain paths. Trust builds through specific channels. Most people see this network as flat, every task, every relationship, every metric carrying equal weight. They're wrong. Some nodes sit at the intersection of multiple flows. When you influence these central positions, the effects ripple outward through the entire system. Change happens faster. Resources move more efficiently. Your decisions carry more weight because they touch more parts of the network. The player who controls these central nodes doesn't just participate in the game. They shape how the game is played. They set priorities for others. They determine the pace of progress. They capture a disproportionate share of the value created. This isn't theory. It's observable reality in every industry, every company, every career that matters. The 80-20 revelation. Here's what most productivity advice gets backwards. It tells you to optimize everything when you should be optimizing the center. The famous 80-20 rule isn't just about time management. It's about leverage concentration. 20% of your activities drive 80% of your results. But more importantly, those activities are interconnected in ways that create exponential rather than linear returns. When you control the center, you don't just get better results from your effort, you get compounding results. Each action amplifies the next. Each success creates conditions for bigger successes. Each relationship opens doors to better relationships. Without a center, you're fighting edge skirmishes that drain energy without building momentum. You win small battles while losing the war. You optimize for activity instead of impact, mistaking motion for progress. The brutal truth is that most professionals never identify their center, let alone control it. They accept the priorities others set for them. They react to the tempo others establish. They compete in arenas others have chosen. Then they wonder why their effort doesn't compound. The 3 myths that keep you scattered. The first myth is that you need to do everything well. This sounds reasonable until you realize that excellence in peripheral areas often comes at the expense of dominance in central areas. The person who tries to optimize everything optimizes nothing. The person who focuses on the center can afford to be mediocre everywhere else because the center carries the load. The second myth is that edge cases matter first. You see this everywhere. Teams that spend months perfecting features that 5% of users might need while ignoring the core experience that affects everyone. Professionals who master obscure skills while neglecting the fundamental capabilities that drive their careers. Edge cases feel important because they're complex and visible, but they're distractions from the center. The third myth is that the center picks itself, that the most important things naturally rise to the top of your attention. In reality, the center is often quiet, foundational, and easy to ignore. It doesn't scream for attention like urgent emails or crisis meetings. It requires intentional identification and deliberate protection. The flow mapping method. Finding your center starts with mapping the flows that matter in your professional ecosystem. Draw a simple diagram with yourself at the middle. Now trace the paths that money, information, and trust take to reach you and flow away from you. Money flows might include your salary source, client relationships, revenue channels, or budget authority. Information flows could be your access to market data, customer feedback, strategic decisions, or industry intelligence. Trust flows encompass your reputation with key stakeholders, your track record on important projects, and your influence over critical decisions. Look for the intersection points, the nodes where multiple flows converge. These are your potential center levers, a distribution channel that affects both money and information flows, a key relationship that influences both trust and access, a core metric that drives both team behavior and resource allocation. Score each potential lever on 2 dimensions, impact and controllability. Impact measures how much influence this lever has over your key outcomes. Controllability measures how much direct influence you have over the lever itself. The sweet spot is high impact and high controllability. These become your center. Most people discover they have far fewer true center levers than they imagined. This isn't a problem, it's a revelation. Fewer levers mean more focused effort. More focused effort means better results. Better results mean stronger position. The guardrail principle. Once you've identified your center levers, you need to protect them from the constant pressure to dilute your focus. This requires establishing guardrails, clear rules about what you will not do, even when it seems important. Guardrails aren't arbitrary restrictions. They're strategic constraints that preserve your ability to dominate the center. Every yes to a peripheral activity is a no to a central one. Every distraction you entertain weakens your position where it matters most. The most successful people are ruthless about their guardrails. They say no to good opportunities that don't strengthen their center. They delegate or eliminate activities that drain attention from their core levers. They make their center unmissable to teammates and partners by consistently prioritizing it above everything else. This feels uncomfortable at first because it requires saying no to people and opportunities that seem valuable. But discomfort is the price of focus, and focus is the price of leverage. The weekly ritual. Center control isn't a one-time decision, it's an ongoing discipline. The most effective approach is a simple weekly review that takes exactly 15 minutes. During this review, you assess each of your 3 center levers using a traffic light system. Green for strong and improving, amber for stable but at risk, red for declining or under threat. Green levers get maintenance attention, just enough to keep them strong without over-investing. Amber levers get focused intervention, specific actions to move them back to green. Red levers get emergency attention, whatever it takes to prevent center collapse. This review serves multiple purposes. It keeps your center visible when everything else demands attention. It creates early warning signals before small problems become big crises. It provides a simple framework for weekly planning that aligns your calendar with your strategy. The review also helps you track the compound effects of center control over time. You'll notice that green weeks tend to cluster together. Success in one lever often supports success in others. Your center becomes a flywheel that generates its own momentum. The keystone metric strategy. Each center lever needs a keystone metric, a single number that captures its health and drives the right behaviors. This isn't about comprehensive measurement. It's about focused attention on what matters most. Choose metrics that are leading rather than lagging indicators. Weekly qualified demos tells you more about future sales than monthly revenue. Daily active users predicts long-term engagement better than total downloads. Time to decision reveals process health more clearly than project completion rates. The keystone metric should be simple enough to track daily, but meaningful enough to guide weekly decisions. It should be directly influenced by your actions, but not easily gamed through shortcuts that undermine long-term health. Most importantly, tie recognition and rewards to these keystone metrics rather than vanity metrics that look impressive but don't drive results. When you celebrate what matters, you reinforce the behaviors that strengthen your center. When center control compounds, the early stages of center control feel like normal improvement, better results, cleaner execution, reduced chaos. But something remarkable happens as your position strengthens. The center starts working for you instead of you working for the center. One center lever stabilizes, delivering consistent results with less effort. Then, two levers start reinforcing each other, creating compound effects that exceed the sum of their parts. Eventually, you reach a tipping point where you're setting the rhythm for your entire ecosystem. Inbound opportunities start dominating outbound effort. Partners queue for your attention instead of you chasing theirs. Your calendar reflects your strategy instead of other people's urgencies. You've moved from playing the game to designing it. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it happens predictably for people who identify their center and defend it consistently. The compound effects of center control create sustainable competitive advantages that are difficult for others to replicate. The moving target challenge. Center control comes with one significant challenge. The center moves as you grow. The levers that got you to your current position may not be the levers that take you to the next level. Success in one arena often opens doors to new arenas with different centers. This requires periodic reevaluation of your center levers. What worked when you were an individual contributor may not work as a team leader. What worked in a startup environment may not work in an enterprise setting. What worked in a growth market may not work in a mature one. The key is recognizing when your center is shifting and adapting quickly rather than clinging to levers that no longer provide the same leverage. This takes courage because it means abandoning strategies that have worked in the past for strategies that might work in the future. But this challenge is also an opportunity. Each time you successfully identify and control a new center, you develop better pattern recognition for the next transition. You become someone who can find leverage in any environment. The foundation for everything. Center control isn't just one strategic capability among many. It's the foundation that makes every other capability more powerful. When you control the center, your initiatives carry more weight. Your experiments reach more people. Your decisions create bigger ripples. But controlling the center is only the beginning. Once you've established your position, you need to fortify it against the inevitable attempts to dislodge you. You need to build what chess players call strong position, the defensive capabilities that let you take risks without inviting ruin. The next chapter will show you how to construct your minimum viable fortress. But first, you need to master the art of finding and holding the center. Because without center control, even the strongest position becomes irrelevant. Chapter 3, Strong Position. The aggressive player attacks first and asks questions later. The strategic player builds an unshakable foundation, then strikes with devastating precision. Guess who wins more often? You've learned to control the center. But center control without strong position is like building a house on quicksand. One unexpected shock, a key client leaves, a project fails, a market shifts, and your carefully constructed leverage collapses. The smartest operators know something that the hustlers don't. Defense isn't the opposite of offense. Defense is what makes offense repeatable. But what does strong position actually mean in the context of modern work? And why do most people get it completely backwards? The speed paradox. Here's the counterintuitive truth that separates amateurs from professionals. The fastest way to move fast is to slow down first. While everyone else is sprinting toward their goals, leaving a trail of broken commitments and emergency fixes, the strategic player invests time up front to eliminate future friction. This feels wrong to most ambitious people. Building systems seems slow when you could be taking action. Creating templates feels bureaucratic when you could be closing deals. Establishing buffers feels conservative when you could be maximizing utilization. But this thinking confuses motion with progress. The person who spends a week building a proposal template saves hours on every future proposal. The person who negotiates standard terms once avoids renegotiating them 50 times. The person who creates decision frameworks eliminates the cognitive load of making the same choices repeatedly. Position isn't about being slow, it's about being deliberately fast where it matters and systematically efficient everywhere else. It's the difference between sprinting and having a sustainable pace that compounds over time. The fortress mindset. Think of your professional life as a medieval fortress. The goal isn't to build the biggest castle. It's to build the minimum viable fortress that protects what matters while enabling you to project power beyond your walls. Your fortress has 3 essential components: assets that provide immediate capability, buffers that absorb unexpected shocks, and systems that reduce the cognitive load of routine decisions. Each component serves a different function, but together they create something powerful: the ability to take calculated risks without inviting ruin. Assets are your ready-to-deploy capabilities, the presentation deck that's always current, the reference letters that vouch for your work, the demo environment that showcases your best thinking, the relationship capital that opens doors with a single phone call. These aren't just nice-to-haves, they're force multipliers that compress the time between decision and action. Buffers are your shock absorbers, the cash reserve that lets you say no to bad opportunities, the time blocks that prevent your calendar from becoming completely reactive, the margin of safety built into your commitments that accounts for the inevitable unexpected complications. Buffers don't just protect against downside, they preserve your ability to recognize and seize upside when it appears. Systems are your cognitive load reducers, the templates that eliminate repetitive thinking, the checklists that prevent costly oversights, the default responses that handle routine requests without depleting your decision-making energy. Systems free your mental bandwidth for the high-leverage thinking that actually moves your position forward. The 3 dangerous myths. The first myth is that you can fix problems later when you have more time and resources. This is backwards thinking. Problems become more expensive to fix as they compound, and you'll never have more time than you have right now. The person who builds strong position early gets to operate from a place of strength. The person who defers it operates from a place of constant vulnerability. The second myth is that building foundations slows you down. In reality, foundations make you faster by eliminating the friction that slows everyone else down. The person with strong position doesn't waste time on emergency meetings, crisis management, or damage control. They get to focus their energy on the moves that actually matter. The third myth is that defensive capabilities are only for large organizations with significant resources. This couldn't be more wrong. Small players need strong position even more than large ones because they have less margin for error. A startup can't afford to lose its key developer. A consultant can't afford to lose their biggest client. A team leader can't afford to lose their top performer. Strong position isn't about size, it's about sustainability. The architecture of defense. Building your minimum viable fortress starts with defining your non-negotiables. These are the thresholds below which you cannot operate effectively. your minimum cash runway before you need to change your risk profile, your maximum response time before relationships start deteriorating, your minimum quality standards before your reputation suffers. Non-negotiables aren't arbitrary constraints. They're strategic guardrails that preserve your ability to make good decisions under pressure. When you know your limits in advance, you can design systems that keep you well within them. Next comes the installation of defaults. Defaults are pre-made decisions that handle routine situations without requiring active thought. The template that structures your weekly updates, the standard terms that govern your project agreements, the canned responses that acknowledge requests while buying you time to provide thoughtful answers. Defaults work because they eliminate decision fatigue on low-stakes choices, preserving your mental energy for high-stakes decisions. They also create consistency, which builds trust with the people who work with you regularly. Buffers come next. These are the margins of safety that prevent small problems from becoming big crises. The extra time you build into project timelines, the backup plans you create for critical dependencies, the reserve capacity you maintain for unexpected opportunities. Buffers feel wasteful until you need them, at which point they feel invaluable. The key is right-sizing them, enough to absorb normal variation without creating unnecessary overhead. Finally, you need to stage your assets. These are the capabilities you prepare in advance so they're ready when opportunities arise. The case studies that demonstrate your track record, the proposals that can be customized quickly for new situations, the partnerships that can be activated with minimal lead time. Staged assets compress the time between recognition and action. While others are scrambling to prepare, you're already moving. The ready room principle. The most effective operators create what military strategists call ready rooms, organized collections of immediately deployable assets. Your ready room might be a folder on your computer, a section in your note-taking app, or a physical binder, but the principle is the same. Everything you need for rapid response in one easily accessible place. Your ready room should contain your core presentation materials, your standard agreements and terms, your reference letters and testimonials, your key contact information, and your decision frameworks. The goal is one-click access to the tools that let you move quickly when speed matters. The ready room principle extends beyond just files and documents. It includes your network of relationships, your understanding of market dynamics, and your knowledge of your own capabilities and limitations. The person with a well-organized ready room can respond to opportunities and threats faster than the person who has to build everything from scratch. This preparation pays dividends in two ways. First, it lets you move faster when timing matters. Second, it signals competence and reliability to the people you work with, which creates more opportunities for future collaboration. The automation advantage. Strong position isn't just about having the right assets, it's about deploying them efficiently. This means automating your first response to common situations. The acknowledgement email that buys you time to provide a thoughtful answer. The scheduling link that eliminates the back and forth of finding meeting times. The status update that keeps stakeholders informed without requiring your active attention. Automation works because it creates the perception of responsiveness without requiring your immediate attention. People feel heard and valued, which preserves relationships while protecting your focus for higher leverage activities. The key is automating the routine while preserving your ability to customize when it matters. Your automated response should acknowledge the request and set expectations for when you'll provide a more detailed answer. Your scheduling system should offer options while respecting your priorities and energy levels. Pre-approval is another form of automation that strengthens your position. By establishing clear criteria for small decisions in advance, you eliminate the need to evaluate every minor choice. Your team knows they can spend up to a certain amount without approval. Your assistant knows they can accept certain types of meetings on your behalf. Your systems know they can execute certain processes without human intervention. Pre-approval works because it pushes decision-making to the edges of your organization while maintaining control over the outcomes. You get the speed benefits of distributed decision-making without the risk of misaligned choices. The compound effect of reliability. As your position strengthens, something remarkable happens. Other people start adapting their behavior to accommodate your strengths. They know you'll respond quickly to important requests, so they bring you the good opportunities first. They know you'll deliver what you promise, so they're willing to take risks on your behalf. They know you'll handle problems professionally, so they're comfortable escalating issues to you. This creates a virtuous cycle where strong position attracts more opportunities, which create more resources, which enable even stronger position. You become someone that others can depend on, which makes you someone that others want to work with. The transition happens gradually, then suddenly. First, you notice fewer emergencies disrupting your weeks. Then you notice faster cycle times as friction disappears from your processes. Eventually, you reach a point where you're setting the terms of engagement rather than accepting whatever terms others offer. This isn't about becoming inflexible or difficult to work with. It's about operating from a position of strength that benefits everyone involved. When you have strong position, you can afford to be generous with your time and resources because you're not operating from a place of scarcity or desperation. The monthly audit ritual. Strong position requires maintenance. Systems decay without attention. Relationships weaken without investment. Assets become outdated without regular updates. The most effective approach is a simple monthly audit that takes 15 minutes and follows a consistent checklist. During your audit, you review each component of your fortress. Are your templates still current? Are your buffers adequate for your current risk profile? Are your staged assets ready for immediate deployment? Are your automated systems working as intended? This audit serves multiple purposes. It keeps your defensive capabilities current and effective. It identifies weaknesses before they become vulnerabilities. It reinforces the habits that maintain strong position over time. The audit also helps you recognize when your position has strengthened enough to enable new offensive capabilities. Strong position isn't an end in itself. It's the foundation that makes everything else possible. When defense becomes offense, the ultimate goal of strong position isn't just protection. It's the ability to take calculated risks that others can't afford. When you have adequate buffers, reliable systems, and staged assets, you can move aggressively when opportunities arise because you're not risking your entire position on any single move. This is where strong position transforms into competitive advantage. While others are paralyzed by the fear of failure, you can experiment boldly because failure won't destroy you. While others are scrambling to respond to changes, you can shape changes because you're operating from stability. But strong position is only the foundation. Once you've built your fortress, you need to learn how to project power beyond its walls. You need to master the art of seizing and maintaining initiative, of setting the tempo that others must follow. The next chapter will reveal the secret that separates reactive players from proactive ones. But first, you must master the discipline of building and maintaining the position that makes bold action possible. Chapter 4. Own Initiative. The meeting starts at 9. By 8:47, she's already sent the follow-up email from yesterday's client call, pushed the updated prototype to the development server, and scheduled 3 strategic outreach messages. While everyone else is grabbing coffee and checking their phones, she's already moved her most important project forward. She doesn't just attend the meeting, she shapes it from a position of momentum. This isn't about being busy, it's about something far more powerful, owning the initiative. But what does that really mean, and why do most people surrender it before their day even begins? The physics of professional motion. Every object at rest stays at rest until acted upon by an external force. Every object in motion stays in motion unless something stops it. Newton's first law doesn't just govern physical objects, it governs careers, projects, and competitive dynamics. Most professionals operate in a state of professional rest. They wait for clarity before acting. They wait for permission before moving. They wait for the perfect moment before starting. Meanwhile, the world moves around them, creating opportunities for others and obstacles for them. The person who owns initiative understands something fundamental. Motion creates clarity, not the other way around. Action generates data. Data reveals truth. Truth enables better decisions. Better decisions create better outcomes. The cycle compounds, but only if you start it. This isn't about reckless action or moving without purpose. It's about understanding that the cost of waiting for perfect information almost always exceeds the cost of acting with imperfect information. It's about recognizing that the person who moves first gets to choose the battlefield, set the terms, and force others to react to their agenda. The tempo control advantage. In competitive dynamics, tempo control is everything. The player who sets the rhythm forces opponents into reactive mode. They're always responding to your moves instead of executing their own strategy. They're playing catch-up instead of playing to win. Tempo control works because it compresses your opponent's decision-making time while expanding your own. When you're setting the pace, you can plan 3 moves ahead. When you're reacting to someone else's pace, you're lucky to stay 1 move behind. This advantage compounds over time. Each initiative you take creates new information and new options. Each response your competitors make reveals their capabilities and limitations. You're learning faster because you're generating more data points. You're improving faster because you're getting more feedback cycles. The person who owns initiative doesn't just win more often, they win more efficiently. They expend less energy because they're not constantly adjusting to external forces. They make fewer mistakes because they're operating from preparation rather than desperation. The 3 fatal myths. The first myth is that you should wait for clarity before taking action. This sounds prudent until you realize that clarity is usually the result of action, not the prerequisite for it. The market doesn't reveal its secrets to observers, it reveals them to participants. The only way to know if something will work is to try it in a small, reversible way. The second myth is that big launches win bigger than small, frequent releases. This is backwards thinking that confuses drama with effectiveness. Big launches create big risks and long feedback loops. Small, frequent releases create learning opportunities and momentum. The person who ships weekly learns faster than the person who ships quarterly, even if each individual release is smaller. The third myth is that momentum is something that happens to you rather than something you engineer. Momentum feels magical when you're experiencing it, but it's actually the predictable result of consistent action combined with intelligent iteration. You don't wait for momentum, you create it through systematic effort applied in the right direction. The first force protocol. Owning initiative starts with what happens in the first hour of your day. Before you check email, before you attend meetings, before you respond to other people's agendas, you execute one irreversible step on your most important project. This is your first force move, the action that sets your day's momentum. The first force move must be irreversible because reversible actions don't create real momentum. Sending an email moves things forward. Drafting an email doesn't. Publishing a blog post creates momentum. Writing a blog post creates potential. Making a phone call generates data. Planning to make a phone call generates anxiety. The first force move must be time-boxed because perfectionism is the enemy of momentum. 45 minutes is enough time to make meaningful progress without getting lost in optimization. You're racing the clock, which forces decisions and prevents overthinking. The first force move must be logged because what gets measured gets managed. A simple table with 3 columns, date, action, and resulting metric, creates accountability and reveals patterns over time. You'll start to see which types of actions generate the most momentum and which ones feel productive but don't actually move things forward. The weekly tempo plan. Daily first force moves create momentum, but weekly tempo plans create rhythm. Your tempo plan consists of 3 forcing functions: scheduled events that pull progress forward whether you feel ready or not. The first forcing function is publication. Every week, you ship something visible to your target audience: a blog post, a prototype, a proposal, a presentation. The specific format matters less than the consistency. Publication creates accountability and generates feedback. It also signals to your network that you're actively creating value rather than just consuming it. The second forcing function is demonstration. Every week, you show your work to someone whose opinion matters: a client, a mentor, a peer, a potential partner. Demonstration accelerates learning because it forces you to articulate your thinking clearly. It also creates opportunities for collaboration and improvement that wouldn't exist if you worked in isolation. The third forcing function is outreach. Every week, you initiate contact with someone who could advance your most important project: a potential client, a strategic partner, a subject matter expert, a decision maker. Outreach expands your network and creates new possibilities. It also keeps you connected to market reality rather than operating from assumptions. These three forcing functions work together to create a sustainable rhythm of progress. Publication builds your reputation. Demonstration improves your work. Outreach expands your opportunities. The combination creates compound effects that accelerate over time. The kill criteria: discipline. Initiative without discipline becomes chaos. The same energy that creates momentum can dissipate into busy work if you don't have clear criteria for when to stop pursuing a particular direction. Kill criteria are pre-established rules that automatically terminate initiatives that aren't generating results. After 2 weeks without meaningful progress, you pivot or stop. After 3 attempts to reach a key stakeholder without response, you move to your backup plan. After a month without positive feedback from your target audience, you try a different approach. Kill criteria work because they prevent the sunk cost fallacy from trapping you in unproductive activities. They also free up mental and emotional energy for more promising opportunities. The person who can kill projects quickly can start new projects quickly. The key is setting kill criteria in advance, when you're optimistic about the project's potential. If you wait until you're frustrated or discouraged, you'll either quit too early or persist too long. Pre-established criteria remove emotion from the decision and make it easier to maintain momentum in productive directions. The counter-cadence strategy. Advanced initiative ownership involves disrupting your competitor's rhythm while maintaining your own. This is called counter-cadence, timing your moves to interfere with their planning cycles and force them into reactive mode. If your industry typically announces new products at quarterly conferences, you announce monthly updates that steal attention and force others to respond. If your competitors launch major initiatives on Mondays, you launch on Fridays to dominate weekend conversations. If they follow predictable seasonal patterns, you create counter-seasonal opportunities. Counter-cadence works because it forces competitors to choose between sticking to their plan or responding to your moves. Either choice weakens their position. If they stick to their plan, they look slow and unresponsive. If they respond to your moves, they abandon their strategy and play your game. The key to effective counter-cadence is maintaining your own rhythm while disrupting theirs. You can't just be reactive to their reactions. You need to have your own consistent tempo that creates predictable value for your audience. The batch and deploy method. Sustainable initiative requires managing your energy efficiently. The most effective approach is batching similar activities and deploying them on a schedule that maximizes impact while minimizing effort. Friday afternoons become preparation time. You batch the research, writing, and asset creation needed for next week's forcing functions. You prepare your outreach messages, draft your publication content, and organize your demonstration materials. This batching reduces context switching and allows for deeper focus. Monday mornings become deployment time. You send the outreach messages, publish the content, and schedule the demonstrations. This timing takes advantage of the week's fresh energy and ensures that your initiatives get attention when people are most receptive. The batch and deploy method works because it separates creation from distribution. When you're creating, you can focus entirely on quality without worrying about timing. When you're deploying, you can focus entirely on execution without worrying about perfection. The social pressure multiplier. Public commitment amplifies initiative by adding social pressure to your internal motivation. When you announce your intentions publicly, you create accountability that's harder to ignore than private goals. The key is making commitments that are specific, time-bound, and verifiable. Instead of saying you'll improve your content marketing, you commit to publishing one blog post every Tuesday for the next month. Instead of promising to expand your network, you commit to having coffee with one new industry contact every week. Public commitment works because it leverages loss aversion, your desire to avoid the social cost of failing to deliver on your promises. It also creates opportunities for support and collaboration from people who want to see you succeed. The most effective public commitments are made to specific individuals rather than general audiences. Telling your mentor that you'll send them a progress update every Friday is more powerful than posting about your goals on social media. When initiative becomes inevitable, as you develop the discipline of daily first force moves and weekly tempo plans, something remarkable happens. Initiative stops feeling like something you have to remember to do and starts feeling like something you can't help but do. The rhythm becomes automatic. The momentum becomes self-sustaining. You start to notice that competitors are timing their moves in response to yours. Partners begin aligning their schedules with your cadence. Your audience starts expecting your regular contributions and notices when they're missing. This is when you've truly owned initiative, when your rhythm becomes the rhythm that others follow. You're no longer reacting to the market, you're creating the market conditions that others react to. But owning initiative is just the beginning. Once you've learned to create momentum, you need to learn to direct it intelligently. You need to develop the ability to see beyond immediate results and understand the cascading effects of your actions. The next chapter will reveal how the most successful strategists think in layers, seeing not just what happens next, but what happens after what happens next, and why this deeper vision is the difference between tactical wins and strategic dominance. Chapter 5, Second Order. The chess amateur sees the immediate threat and moves to block it. The grandmaster sees the same threat but recognizes something else. Blocking it creates a weakness 3 moves later that will cost the game. While the amateur celebrates avoiding immediate danger, the grandmaster is already positioning for the inevitable endgame. Most professionals think like chess amateurs. They optimize for the immediate payoff, solve the urgent problem, and celebrate the quick win. They're so focused on what happens next that they miss what happens after what happens next. This short-sightedness doesn't just limit their upside, it creates hidden downsides that compound over time. But what if you could develop the ability to see around corners? What if you could anticipate the ripple effects of your decisions before they ripple? The ripple effect, blindness. Every action creates reactions. Every decision triggers consequences. Every move shifts the entire system in ways that aren't immediately visible. The person who only sees first-order effects is like someone watching the surface of a pond while ignoring the currents underneath. First-order thinking asks, what will this accomplish? Second-order thinking asks, what will this accomplish, and then what will that accomplish? The difference between these two questions is the difference between tactical success and strategic failure. Consider the manager who cuts training budgets to hit quarterly targets. First-order effect. Costs decrease, margins improve, targets are met. Second-order effects. Employee skills stagnate, productivity declines, turnover increases, replacement costs skyrocket. The immediate win creates a delayed loss that's larger than the original gain. Or consider the entrepreneur who accepts every speaking opportunity to build their personal brand. First-order effect. Increased visibility, more followers, enhanced reputation. Second-order effects. Less time for product development, team feels neglected, Core business suffers. Reputation becomes hollow because there's no substance behind the brand. These aren't edge cases. They're the predictable result of optimizing for immediate outcomes without considering systemic consequences. The hidden cost of quick wins. The most dangerous decisions are the ones that feel obviously right in the moment. They solve immediate problems, deliver quick results, and make everyone feel productive, but they often create larger problems downstream that are harder to see and more expensive to fix. Quick wins become expensive when they create technical debt, relationship debt, or strategic debt. Technical debt happens when you choose the fast solution over the sustainable solution. Relationship debt happens when you prioritize short-term transactions over long-term partnerships. Strategic debt happens when you sacrifice future optionality for immediate gains. The person who thinks in first-order terms accumulates these debts without realizing it. They're always solving today's crisis while creating tomorrow's emergency. They're always catching up, always behind, always reactive, because they never see the problems coming until they're already problems. The person who thinks in second-order terms invests time up front to avoid problems downstream. They choose solutions that solve the immediate issue while strengthening their position for future challenges. They see the system, not just the symptoms. The three-step cascade method. Second-order thinking doesn't require complex analysis or lengthy planning sessions. It requires a simple mental model that you can apply in 15 minutes or less. The three-step cascade method maps the immediate effect, the knock-on effect, and the delayed feedback loop of any significant decision. Step 1 is now. What happens immediately if you take this action? This is first-order thinking, and most people stop here. But this is just the beginning. Step 2 is next. What happens as a result of what happens now? How do other people react to your action? What new constraints or opportunities does your action create? What systems or relationships does it affect? Step 3 is later. What happens as a result of what happens next? How do the second-order effects create third-order effects? What feedback loops get triggered? What long-term patterns get established? This cascade mapping reveals the true cost and benefit of your decisions. Sometimes an action that looks expensive in the short term creates compounding benefits in the long term. Sometimes an action that looks beneficial in the short term creates compounding costs in the long term. The goal isn't perfect prediction, it's pattern recognition. You're training your mind to see the connections between actions and consequences across different time horizons. The two-door framework. Not all decisions carry the same risk profile. Some decisions are easily reversible if they don't work out. Others lock you into a path that's difficult or impossible to change. Understanding this difference is crucial for maintaining both speed and safety in your decision-making. Jeff Bezos popularized the concept of one-way doors versus two-way doors. Two-way doors are decisions you can easily reverse if they don't work out. You can walk through them, test the results, and walk back if necessary. One-way doors are decisions that significantly change your situation and are difficult to reverse. Two-way door decisions should be made quickly with minimal analysis. The cost of being wrong is low because you can correct course easily. The cost of delay is high because you're missing learning opportunities and momentum. One-way door decisions deserve more careful analysis because the cost of being wrong is high. These are the decisions where second-order thinking becomes essential. You need to understand not just what happens if you're right, but what happens if you're wrong. The framework changes how you approach decision-making entirely. Instead of applying the same level of analysis to every decision, you calibrate your process to the reversibility of the choice. This lets you move fast on low-risk decisions while being appropriately careful with high-risk ones. The optionality preservation principle. The best decisions don't just solve immediate problems, they create more options for the future. They open doors rather than closing them. They preserve your ability to adapt as circumstances change. Optionality is valuable because the future is uncertain. The strategy that works today might not work tomorrow. The opportunity that seems attractive now might become less attractive as you learn more. The relationship that seems unimportant today might become crucial next year. When you preserve optionality, you're buying insurance against uncertainty. You're maintaining your ability to pivot, adapt, and take advantage of new information as it becomes available. Some decisions naturally create optionality. Learning new skills opens career paths. Building relationships creates collaboration opportunities. Developing modular systems allows for easier iteration and improvement. Other decisions naturally destroy optionality. Exclusive partnerships limit future relationships. Highly specialized investments reduce flexibility. Public commitments create pressure to continue even when circumstances change. The key is recognizing which type of decision you're making and choosing accordingly. When possible, favor moves that grow your options rather than constrain them. The regret minimization exercise. One of the most powerful tools for second-order thinking is the regret minimization exercise. Instead of asking what you want to do now, you ask what future you will wish you had done. This mental time travel forces you to consider long-term consequences that are easy to ignore when you're focused on immediate pressures. It helps you distinguish between decisions that feel good now but create regret later, and decisions that feel difficult now but create satisfaction later. The exercise works because regret is often a second-order emotion. You rarely regret taking action that didn't work out. You regret not taking action when you had the chance. You rarely regret investing in relationships. You regret neglecting them. You rarely regret building capabilities. You regret staying stagnant. When you're facing a difficult decision, imagine yourself 5 years from now looking back. What would that future version of yourself advise? What would they regret not doing? What would they be grateful you did despite the short-term costs? This perspective shift often reveals the right choice, even when the immediate trade-offs are unclear. The tripwire system. Second-order thinking isn't just about making better initial decisions. It's about adapting intelligently as consequences unfold. The tripwire system helps you do this by establishing clear criteria for when to change course. Tripwires are pre-established metrics or events that trigger specific responses. If your new product doesn't reach a certain adoption rate within 3 months, you pivot the positioning. If a key team member gives notice, you accelerate succession planning. If a market trend reaches a certain threshold, you shift resource allocation. Tripwires work because they remove emotion and bias from adaptation decisions. When you're in the middle of executing a strategy, it's easy to rationalize poor results or ignore warning signs. Tripwires force you to confront reality and respond appropriately. The key is setting tripwires when you're optimistic about your strategy, not when you're already seeing problems. This ensures that your criteria are realistic rather than overly pessimistic or optimistic. Tripwires also help you communicate your thinking to others. When your team understands the conditions under which you'll change course, they can help you monitor those conditions and prepare for potential pivots. The Black Book of Patterns. Experience is the best teacher of second-order effects, but you don't have to learn everything through personal experience. You can accelerate your learning by studying patterns from your own past and from others' experiences. Keep a simple record of second-order effects you've observed, the decision that seemed smart but created unexpected problems, the choice that felt risky but opened new opportunities, the pattern that repeated across different contexts. This black book becomes a reference guide for future decisions. When you're facing a similar situation, you can check whether you've seen this pattern before and how it played out. The most valuable patterns are the ones that seem counterintuitive, the times when the obvious choice was wrong, the situations where patience paid off better than speed, the moments when saying no created more opportunities than saying yes. Over time, your pattern recognition improves and your second-order thinking becomes more accurate. You start to see the hidden connections that others miss. The compound effect of foresight. As you develop the habit of second-order thinking, something remarkable happens. You start making fewer mistakes, not because you're more careful, but because you're more aware. You start creating more opportunities, not because you're luckier, but because you're positioning yourself better. People begin to notice that you seem to anticipate problems before they become crises. You seem to be in the right place at the right time more often. You seem to make decisions that age well rather than decisions that require constant correction. This reputation for foresight becomes its own asset. People start asking for your opinion on important decisions. They start including you in strategic conversations. They start trusting your judgment because your track record demonstrates that you see things others miss. The compound effect accelerates over time. Better decisions create better outcomes. Better outcomes create better opportunities. Better opportunities create better decisions. The cycle reinforces itself. But second-order thinking is just one component of strategic superiority. Even the best long-term thinking is useless if you can't execute quickly enough to capitalize on your insights. You need to compress your learning cycles so that you can test your hypotheses and adapt your strategies faster than your competition. The next chapter will reveal how the most successful strategists create tight feedback loops that let them learn truth faster than anyone else. But the principles behind fast loops might surprise you with their elegant simplicity. Chapter 6: Fast Loops. The fighter pilot banks left, processes new radar data, adjusts course, and fires, all in seconds. Meanwhile, the enemy pilot is still analyzing the same radar data the first pilot acted on 30 seconds ago. The faster pilot doesn't just win because of superior equipment or training. They win because they complete their decision cycle faster than their opponent can complete theirs. This isn't just about military strategy. It's about a fundamental principle that governs every competitive environment. The player who can observe, orient, decide, and act faster than their competition doesn't just win more often. They force their competition into a reactive state where victory becomes nearly impossible. But what does this mean for your professional life, and how do you compress your own decision cycles without sacrificing quality? The speed-learning connection. Most people think speed and quality are opposites. They believe that moving fast means making mistakes, cutting corners, and producing inferior results. This belief keeps them trapped in slow cycles, while their competitors learn faster and adapt quicker. The truth is counterintuitive. Speed improves learning quality when applied correctly. Fast cycles generate more data points. More data points reveal patterns sooner. Patterns revealed sooner enable better decisions. Better decisions create better outcomes. The key is understanding what to speed up and what to slow down. You speed up the cycle time, how quickly you can test an idea and get feedback. You slow down the analysis of that feedback, how carefully you extract insights from each cycle. Think of it like a scientist running experiments. The scientist who can run 10 experiments per week learns faster than the scientist who runs 1 experiment per month, even if each individual experiment is smaller. Volume of learning beats depth of analysis when you're trying to understand complex dynamic systems. This principle applies whether you're developing products, building relationships, or advancing your career. The person who can test ideas quickly and iterate based on feedback will outperform the person who spends months perfecting their first attempt. The OODA advantage. Fighter pilot John Boyd discovered something remarkable while studying aerial combat. The pilot who could complete their observe, orient, decide, act cycle faster than their opponent would win, regardless of who had the better aircraft. This insight revolutionized military strategy and has profound implications for any competitive environment. The OODA loop works because it creates a mismatch between your mental model of reality and your opponent's mental model. While they're still operating based on old information, you're already acting on new information. This forces them into a reactive posture where they're always responding to your moves instead of executing their own strategy. In professional contexts, this translates to competitive advantage through superior information processing. While your competitors are holding weekly strategy meetings to discuss market changes, you're making daily adjustments based on real-time feedback. While they're debating the implications of new data, you're already testing responses to that data. The OODA advantage compounds over time. Each faster cycle gives you more current information. More current information enables better decisions. Better decisions create better outcomes. Better outcomes create more resources for even faster cycles. But speed without structure becomes chaos. The goal isn't to move fast randomly, it's to move fast systematically. The 3-metric dashboard. Fast loops require fast observation, which means you need a simple way to see what's actually happening in your environment. Most people drown in data when they should be surfing on signals. The solution is a 3-metric dashboard that captures the essential health of your most important systems. 3 metrics, not 30. 3 metrics you can review in under 10 minutes. 3 metrics that actually predict future outcomes rather than just describing past performance. The first metric should capture input, the leading indicator that drives everything else. For a salesperson, this might be qualified conversations per week. For a product manager, this might be user engagement with new features. For a team leader, this might be the number of blockers removed per day. The second metric should capture throughput, how efficiently you're converting inputs into outputs, conversion rates, cycle times, quality scores. This metric tells you whether your system is getting better or worse at producing results. The third metric should capture output, the lagging indicator that represents your ultimate goal. Revenue, user growth, team satisfaction. This metric tells you whether your efforts are translating into meaningful outcomes. These 3 metrics create a simple feedback loop. Input metrics tell you whether you're doing enough of the right activities. Throughput metrics tell you whether you're getting better at those activities. Output metrics tell you whether those activities are producing the results you want. The dashboard should be visual, automated, and accessible. You should be able to see all 3 metrics on a single screen without clicking through multiple reports or running complex queries. The 10-minute huddle. Fast observation requires fast orientation, the ability to quickly make sense of what you're seeing and identify the most important signal in the noise. This happens through a daily 10-minute huddle that follows a strict format designed to maximize insight while minimizing time. The huddle starts with a 60-second review of the 3-metric dashboard. What changed since yesterday? What trends are emerging? What anomalies need attention? Next comes the signal identification phase. In plain English, what is the one most important thing the data is telling you today? Not 3 things, not 5 things, 1 thing. This forces prioritization and prevents analysis paralysis. Then comes the implication discussion. If this signal is accurate, what does it mean for your strategy? What assumptions might be wrong? What opportunities might be emerging? What threats might be developing? The huddle ends with commitment to action. Based on this signal and its implications, what is the smallest change you can make today to test your understanding? This isn't about making big strategic pivots. It's about making small, reversible moves that generate more data. The entire process takes 10 minutes because time constraints force clarity. When you have unlimited time to discuss, discussions expand to fill the time available. When you have 10 minutes, you focus on what matters most. The decision hygiene protocol. Fast loops require fast decisions, which means you need clean decision-making processes that eliminate common sources of delay and confusion. Decision hygiene is about creating standard operating procedures that keep decisions moving without sacrificing quality. Every decision needs a clear owner, the person who has both the authority and the accountability to make the call. This person can gather input from others, but they can't delegate the decision itself. Shared decision-making sounds collaborative, but it usually just creates delays and diffused responsibility. Every decision needs a clear deadline. Open-ended decisions become endless discussions. Time-bounded decisions force resolution. The deadline should be appropriate to the decision's importance and reversibility, but it should always exist. Every decision should be documented in one sentence that captures the choice made and the primary reasoning. This isn't about creating bureaucracy, it's about creating clarity. When decisions are documented, they can be reviewed, learned from, and reversed if necessary. The decision hygiene protocol prevents the most common causes of slow loops, unclear ownership, endless debate, and forgotten rationale. It creates a systematic approach to decision-making that scales with the complexity of your environment. The micro-change philosophy. Fast loops require fast action, which means shipping small changes frequently rather than large changes occasionally. Micro-changes are the smallest possible modifications that still generate meaningful feedback about your hypotheses. A micro-change might be adjusting the subject line of your weekly email to test engagement. It might be adding one question to your customer interviews to test a new hypothesis. It might be changing the order of items in your presentation to test comprehension. Micro-changes work because they minimize risk while maximizing learning. If a micro-change doesn't work, you've lost very little. If it does work, you've gained valuable insight that can inform larger changes. The key is ensuring that every micro-change is connected to a hypothesis and generates measurable feedback. Random changes don't create learning, purposeful changes do. Micro-changes also create momentum. When you ship something every day, even if it's small, you maintain forward progress and build confidence in your ability to improve continuously. The archive and revisit rule. Fast loops generate a lot of information and ideas, but not all of them can be acted upon immediately. The archive and revisit rule prevents good ideas from getting lost while keeping current discussions focused. When a debate or discussion doesn't reach resolution within 24 hours, it gets archived with a specific date for revisiting. This prevents endless circular discussions while ensuring that important topics don't disappear forever. The revisit date should be tied to when new information will be available. If you're debating a product feature, you might revisit after the next user research session. If you're discussing a strategic partnership, you might revisit after the next quarterly review. This rule works because it acknowledges that not every question can be answered with currently available information. Instead of forcing premature decisions or allowing endless debate, it creates a systematic way to defer decisions until better information is available. The artifact requirement. Every loop must end with a shipped artifact, something tangible that moves your position forward. This prevents the illusion of progress that comes from having good discussions without taking concrete action. An artifact might be a published blog post, a sent email, a deployed code change, a scheduled meeting, or an updated document. The specific form matters less than the fact that something concrete has been created and shared. The artifact requirement forces closure on each loop. You can't just discuss and analyze. You have to produce something that advances your position. This creates accountability and ensures that your fast loops translate into real progress. Artifacts also create a record of your learning and progress over time. When you look back at what you've shipped, you can see patterns in your thinking and evolution in your approach. The compound effect of velocity. As you develop the discipline of fast loops, something remarkable happens. Your time to insight decreases dramatically. Problems that used to take weeks to identify and address now get caught and fixed in days. Opportunities that used to be missed because of slow recognition now get captured quickly. Your competitors start operating from outdated information while you're acting on current data. They're debating last week's problems while you're solving this week's challenges. They're planning responses to your previous moves while you're already executing your next moves. This velocity advantage compounds over time. Each faster cycle gives you more current information than your competitors have. Each better decision based on that information creates better outcomes. Each better outcome provides more resources for even faster cycles. But velocity without direction is just chaos. Even the fastest loops are useless if they're optimizing the wrong things or solving the wrong problems. You need to ensure that your speed is focused on the constraints that actually matter, the bottlenecks that determine your system's overall performance. The next chapter will reveal how to identify these hidden choke points and why most improvement efforts fail because they're optimizing the wrong parts of the system. But the solution is simpler than you might expect. Chapter 7, Bottlenecks. The factory manager walks the production line, clipboard in hand, making improvements everywhere. He speeds up the packaging station, adds efficiency software to inventory management, and trains the shipping team on new protocols. After 3 months of relentless optimization, overall output hasn't budged. Meanwhile, the wise plant engineer focuses on one thing, the single machine that determines how fast everything else can flow. Guess who delivers results? This isn't just a manufacturing story. It's the fundamental reality of every system, every process, every career. There's always one constraint that determines the speed of everything else. Most people exhaust themselves optimizing the wrong things, while the real bottleneck sits unchanged, quietly dictating their fate. But what if you could develop the ability to see the true constraint in any system? What if you could focus your improvement efforts where they actually matter? The invisible governor. Every system has a hidden governor, a single point that controls the flow of everything else. Like the narrowest part of an hourglass that determines how fast sand can fall, this constraint sets the pace for your entire operation regardless of how fast everything else could theoretically move. The constraint might be a person who approves all decisions. It might be a process that creates delays. It might be a resource that's always in short supply. It might be your own attention span or energy level. Whatever it is, this constraint is quietly governing your throughput while you focus on optimizing everything else. Most people can't see their constraints because they're looking at the wrong things. They measure activity instead of flow. They optimize individual components instead of system performance. They add resources instead of removing friction. The person who can identify and elevate constraints doesn't just work more efficiently, they transform the fundamental performance characteristics of their entire system. They don't just get better results, they get different results that weren't possible before. The optimization illusion. Here's the counterintuitive truth that separates systems thinkers from activity optimizers. Improving anything that isn't the constraint is an illusion. It feels productive, it looks impressive, and it generates no meaningful improvement in overall performance. If your constraint is decision approval speed, optimizing your research process won't help. If your constraint is client onboarding capacity, improving your sales process will just create a bigger backlog. If your constraint is your own deep work time, optimizing your email templates won't move the needle. This is why most improvement efforts fail. People optimize what's easy to see and measure rather than what actually controls system performance. They make the fast parts faster, while the slow parts stay slow. They celebrate local improvements while global performance stagnates. The optimization illusion is seductive because it provides the satisfaction of improvement without the difficulty of addressing root causes. It's easier to speed up the parts that are already working than to fix the parts that are broken. But easy improvements don't create breakthrough results. The person who understands constraints focuses all improvement effort on the one thing that matters most. They ignore opportunities to optimize non-constraints, no matter how obvious or appealing those opportunities might seem. The Q detective method. Finding your true constraint requires becoming a detective of delays. You need to look for the places where work piles up, where people wait, where things get stuck. These cues reveal the location of your bottleneck more accurately than any theoretical analysis. Start by mapping your workflow from beginning to end. Not the way it's supposed to work according to your procedures, but the way it actually works in practice. Where does work come from? What steps does it go through? Where does it get delayed or reworked? At each step, measure the queue length. How much work is waiting to be processed? The step with the longest queue is usually your constraint. This is where work backs up because the processing capacity can't keep up with the demand. But queues can be misleading if you only look at them once. A queue might be long because of a temporary spike in demand or a temporary reduction in capacity. You need to observe patterns over time to identify the persistent constraint. Look for the step where people are always busy, always behind, always apologizing for delays. Look for the step where work gets reworked most often. Look for the step where small problems create big delays downstream. The constraint often hides in plain sight, disguised as just how things work around here. People adapt to constraints so completely that they stop seeing them as constraints. They become invisible parts of the landscape. The elevation strategy. Once you've identified your constraint, you need to elevate it, increase its capacity to process work. This is where you should focus all your improvement resources, even if it means ignoring opportunities to optimize other parts of the system. Elevation can take many forms. You might add tools that make the constraint more efficient. You might provide training that increases skill levels. You might add budget that removes resource limitations. You might redesign processes that eliminate unnecessary steps. The key is understanding what type of constraint you're dealing with. If it's a capacity constraint, you need more processing power. If it's a skill constraint, you need better training or different people. If it's a resource constraint, you need more budget or better allocation. If it's a process constraint, you need redesign or automation. Sometimes elevation requires difficult decisions. You might need to hire expensive specialists. You might need to invest in costly tools. You might need to change long-established procedures. These decisions feel risky because they require significant investment in one area while ignoring others. But this focused investment is exactly what creates breakthrough improvements. When you elevate the constraint, you improve the performance of the entire system. When you optimize non-constraints, you improve nothing that matters. The protection protocol. Elevating your constraint is only half the battle. You also need to protect it from being overwhelmed by upstream demand or starved by upstream delays. This requires implementing work-in-process limits and buffer management. Work-in-process limits cap the amount of work that can enter your system at any given time. This prevents the constraint from being overwhelmed by more work than it can handle. It also prevents upstream steps from overproducing work that just sits in queues. WIP limits feel counterintuitive because they seem to reduce capacity. In reality, they increase throughput by reducing variability and cycle time. When work flows smoothly through the system, more gets done even though less gets started. Buffer management involves creating small reserves of work upstream from the constraint to ensure it never runs out of things to process. The constraint should always be busy because any idle time at the constraint reduces the throughput of the entire system. The protection protocol also includes priority rules that ensure the most important work gets processed first. When everything is equally urgent, nothing is truly urgent. Clear prioritization helps the constraint focus on work that creates the most value. The constraint migration phenomenon. Here's something that surprises most people. When you successfully elevate one constraint, another constraint appears somewhere else in the system. This isn't a failure, it's success. It means you've actually improved system performance enough that a different part has become the limiting factor. Constraint migration is why bottleneck management is an ongoing discipline rather than a one-time fix. You need to continuously monitor your system to identify where the constraint has moved and focus your improvement efforts there. This migration pattern explains why many improvement initiatives lose momentum over time. People fix the obvious constraint, celebrate the improvement, and then wonder why progress stalls. They don't realize that the constraint has simply moved to a different location. The most effective operators treat constraint migration as a feature, not a bug. Each time they elevate a constraint, they're raising the performance ceiling of their entire system. Each new constraint represents a new opportunity for breakthrough improvement. The deliberate constraint advantage. While most people see constraints as problems to be eliminated, strategic thinkers understand that some constraints are actually advantages to be cultivated. Deliberate constraints focus effort, reduce decision fatigue, and increase quality. When you limit your product line to 3 core offerings, you create a constraint that forces focus and excellence. When you limit your client base to a specific niche, you create a constraint that enables specialization and premium pricing. When you limit your meeting schedule to specific days, you create a constraint that protects deep work time. Deliberate constraints work because they eliminate the paradox of choice. When you have unlimited options, you waste energy deciding between them. When you have constrained options, you can focus your energy on executing excellently within those constraints. The key is choosing your constraints intentionally rather than accepting them by default. You want constraints that align with your strategy and support your goals, not constraints that work against them. The flow visualization system. Managing constraints effectively requires making work visible so you can see where it's flowing and where it's stuck. The most effective approach is a simple Kanban board that shows work moving through your process. Create columns for each major step in your workflow. Create cards for each piece of work. Move cards from left to right as work progresses. This visual system makes cues obvious and reveals patterns that are invisible when work exists only in email threads and task lists. The visualization system should show not just what work is being done, but how long it's been in each stage. Work that sits in one column for too long indicates a constraint. Work that moves quickly through most columns but gets stuck in one indicates where to focus improvement efforts. Visual management also enables better communication about priorities and capacity. When everyone can see the current state of work, conversations about what to work on next become more productive and less political. The stop-starting philosophy. One of the most powerful constraint management techniques is the stop-starting, start-finishing philosophy. Instead of beginning new work when you feel productive, you focus on completing work that's already in progress. This philosophy works because work in progress creates hidden costs. It consumes mental bandwidth, creates context-switching overhead, and delays feedback. The more work you have in progress simultaneously, the longer each individual piece takes to complete. When you limit work in progress and focus on finishing, you reduce cycle time and increase predictability. You also reduce the stress that comes from juggling multiple priorities simultaneously. The stop-starting philosophy requires discipline because starting new work feels more exciting than finishing old work. But finishing creates value while starting just creates potential value. The fast lane exception. While WIP limits and flow management improve overall system performance, they can create problems for urgent small items that need to bypass the normal process. The solution is creating a fast lane for work that meets specific criteria. Fast lane work should be genuinely urgent, genuinely small, and genuinely unable to wait for the normal process. It should represent a small percentage of total work volume to avoid overwhelming the constraint. The fast lane prevents urgent small items from clogging your main workflow while maintaining the discipline of WIP limits for normal work. It's an escape valve that preserves system performance while accommodating reality. When flow becomes effortless. As you develop skill in constraint management, something remarkable happens. Work begins to flow through your system with less effort and more predictability. Delays become rare. Rework becomes minimal. Stress levels drop because people aren't constantly fighting fires. Your stakeholders start to trust your delivery commitments because you consistently meet them. Your team becomes happier because they're not constantly overwhelmed. Your results improve because more work gets completed in less time. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it happens predictably for people who focus on constraints rather than trying to optimize everything. The compound effects of flow improvement create sustainable competitive advantages. But even the smoothest flow is meaningless if it's flowing in the wrong direction. Even the most efficient system is worthless if it's efficiently producing the wrong outcomes. You need to learn how to place bets that can transform your entire trajectory. Small experiments with limited downside and unlimited upside. The next chapter will reveal the secret of asymmetric thinking, but the principles behind placing winning bets might challenge everything you believe about risk and reward. Chapter 8: Asymmetric Bets. The venture capitalist reviews 100 pitches and invests in 10 companies. 9 fail completely. 1 returns 50 times the investment. The portfolio generates massive returns despite a 90% failure rate. Meanwhile, the conservative investor carefully researches each opportunity, invests only in sure things, and earns steady but unremarkable returns year after year. Both approaches seem rational. Both investors are intelligent and hardworking, but only one understands the mathematics of asymmetric outcomes, and that understanding makes all the difference between linear growth and exponential breakthroughs. This isn't just about financial investing. It's about a fundamental approach to opportunity that separates those who achieve predictable results from those who achieve transformational ones. The power law reality. Most people think outcomes follow a normal distribution, that most results cluster around the average with a few outliers on either side. This thinking leads to strategies focused on consistency, risk avoidance, and incremental improvement. It's a reasonable approach for a world that doesn't exist. In reality, outcomes in competitive environments follow power laws. A few results drive most of the value, a few customers generate most of the revenue, a few employees create most of the innovation, a few decisions determine most of the trajectory. This power law distribution means that the strategy of doing everything well is fundamentally flawed. You can't optimize your way to breakthrough results by making small improvements across all areas. You need a few big wins to offset many small losses. The person who understands power laws doesn't try to avoid failure. They try to position themselves where failure is cheap and success is transformational. They don't seek certainty. They seek convexity, where the upside potential far exceeds the downside risk. This shift in thinking changes everything about how you approach opportunities, allocate resources, and measure success. The convexity advantage. Convexity is the mathematical property where gains are larger than losses for equivalent moves in opposite directions. In practical terms, it means structuring situations where you can lose small amounts but win large amounts. Most people unconsciously create concave situations where they can win small amounts but lose large amounts. They take on fixed commitments with unlimited downside. They pursue opportunities with capped upside but uncapped risk. They optimize for avoiding small losses while exposing themselves to large ones. The strategic player deliberately creates convex situations. They make small bets with limited downside and unlimited upside. They structure deals where they participate in the upside but limit their exposure to the downside. They create options that cost little to maintain but could be worth a fortune if exercised. Convexity isn't about gambling. It's about engineering favorable risk-reward ratios. It's about creating situations where being wrong costs you little, but being right changes everything. The key insight is that you don't need to be right very often if you're right in a big way when you are right. A few asymmetric wins can more than compensate for many small losses. The 3-bet portfolio. Asymmetric thinking becomes practical through a systematic approach to opportunity creation. Instead of putting all your effort into one big bet, you create a portfolio of small bets designed to capture different types of upside. The first bet is a distribution play, an experiment in reaching your audience through a new channel or method. This might be testing a new social media platform, partnering with an influencer, or trying a different content format. Distribution bets work because they can scale quickly if they connect with an audience. The second bet is a product spike, a small addition or modification that could significantly increase value for your customers. This might be a new feature, a different pricing model, or a complementary service. Product bets work because they can create step function improvements in customer satisfaction and willingness to pay. The third bet is a relationship door, an investment in a connection that could open new opportunities. This might be collaborating with someone in a different industry, joining a new professional community, or helping someone with no immediate expectation of return. Relationship bets work because they can create access to opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. Each bet should meet 3 criteria: cheap enough that failure doesn't hurt, fast enough that you get quick feedback, and scalable enough that success could be transformational. The exposure stacking strategy. The difference between a good asymmetric bet and a great one often comes down to exposure stacking, lining up multiple ways for the bet to succeed before you launch it. This isn't about guaranteeing success, which is impossible. It's about maximizing the probability that success, if it occurs, gets noticed and amplified. Before launching your distribution experiment, you line up potential media coverage, affiliate partnerships, and platform features. Before releasing your product spike, you prepare case studies, testimonials, and demonstration opportunities. Before making your relationship investment, you identify mutual connections, shared interests, and collaboration possibilities. Exposure stacking works because most good ideas fail, not because they're bad ideas, but because they don't get enough attention to gain traction. By preparing multiple exposure channels in advance, you increase the odds that your bet will be seen by the right people at the right time. The key is doing this preparation work before you need it, when you have time to be thoughtful and strategic rather than reactive and desperate. The kill criteria discipline. Asymmetric betting requires ruthless discipline about when to stop pursuing bets that aren't working. Without clear kill criteria, small bets become large bets through incremental investment, destroying the asymmetric risk profile that made them attractive in the first place. Each bet needs pre-established criteria for success, failure, and continuation. Success criteria define what metrics need to be achieved for the bet to be worth scaling. Failure criteria define what signals indicate the bet should be terminated. Continuation criteria define what progress is needed to justify additional investment. These criteria should be specific, measurable, and time-bound. After 2 weeks, you need to see a specific level of engagement. After 1 month, you need to see a specific conversion rate. After 2 months, you need to see a specific growth trajectory. The discipline comes from actually following these criteria when the time comes. It's easy to rationalize continuing a bet that's showing marginal progress, or to quit a bet that's showing promise but hasn't hit its targets yet. Pre-established criteria remove emotion from these decisions. Kill criteria also free up mental and financial resources for new bets. The faster you can identify and terminate unsuccessful bets, the more resources you have available for potentially successful ones. The double down decision. While kill criteria help you stop unsuccessful bets quickly, you also need clear criteria for when to dramatically increase investment in successful bets. The biggest mistake in asymmetric betting is treating a winning bet like a normal bet instead of recognizing its potential for transformation. When a bet crosses your success threshold, you need to be prepared to shift significant resources towards scaling it. This might mean reallocating budget from other projects, changing your priorities, or bringing in additional team members. The double down decision requires courage because it means abandoning the diversified approach that got you to this point in favor of concentrated investment in one opportunity. But this concentration is exactly what converts a small win into a transformational outcome. The key is having the resources and flexibility to make this shift when the opportunity arises. If all your resources are tied up in fixed commitments, you can't capitalize on asymmetric opportunities even when you identify them. The asset conversion process. Successful asymmetric bets don't just generate immediate returns, they create assets that can be leveraged for future opportunities. The process of converting wins into durable assets is what creates compound effects over time. A successful distribution experiment becomes a case study that attracts other distribution partners. A successful product spike becomes a testimonial that increases conversion rates. A successful relationship investment becomes a referral source that opens new doors. The asset conversion process requires intentional effort to document, package, and promote your successes. You need to capture the story of what worked, why it worked, and how others can benefit from working with you. These assets become the foundation for your next round of asymmetric bets. Each success creates credibility that makes future successes more likely. Each win creates resources that enable bigger bets. Each asset creates leverage that amplifies future efforts. The Portfolio Balance Challenge. Managing an asymmetric betting portfolio requires balancing several competing demands. You need enough bets to capture the benefits of diversification, but not so many that you can't give each one adequate attention. You need bets that are independent enough that they don't all fail for the same reason, but related enough that you can learn from one to improve the others. You also need to balance the portfolio across time horizons. Some bets should be designed to pay off quickly, providing near-term feedback and potential wins. Others should be designed for longer-term payoffs, creating options that might not be valuable today, but could be transformational in the future. The most challenging balance is between asymmetric betting and core business maintenance. You can't neglect your existing responsibilities to chase asymmetric opportunities, but you also can't let routine maintenance consume all your resources and attention. The solution is ring-fencing a specific percentage of your time and resources for asymmetric bets while protecting the rest for core activities. This ensures that you're making progress on both fronts without sacrificing either. The compound effect of optionality. As you develop skill in asymmetric betting, something remarkable happens. You start to accumulate options, potential opportunities that you can exercise when conditions are favorable. These options have value even when they're not being exercised because they preserve your ability to capitalize on future changes. Each successful bet creates new options. Each new relationship opens potential collaborations. Each new capability enables new experiments. Each new asset provides leverage for new opportunities. Over time, this accumulation of options creates what venture capitalists call option value, the mathematical worth of having choices available even when you're not currently using them. Option value compounds because options create more options. The person with many options can be patient and selective about which opportunities to pursue. They can wait for the right moment, the right partner, the right market conditions. They're not forced to take the first opportunity that comes along because they have alternatives. When asymmetry becomes identity, the ultimate goal of asymmetric betting isn't just better results. It's a fundamental shift in how you approach opportunity and risk. Instead of trying to predict and control outcomes, you position yourself to benefit from uncertainty and change. This shift changes how others perceive you. You become known as someone who spots opportunities early, who can turn small investments into big wins, who creates value in unexpected ways. This reputation attracts more and better opportunities, creating a virtuous cycle of increasing option value. But asymmetric betting is just one component of strategic thinking. Even the best portfolio of bets is meaningless without the systematic approach that integrates all the capabilities you've learned into a coherent way of operating. The final chapter will reveal how to weave together everything you've discovered into a personal operating system that transforms not just your results, but your entire relationship with work and success. But the integration might be simpler and more powerful than you expect. Chapter 9, Strategic Life. The transformation is complete when strategy stops being something you do and becomes something you are. When your calendar reflects your priorities instead of other people's urgencies. When your decisions compound instead of cancel each other out. When your reputation precedes you into every room, every conversation, every opportunity. You've learned 7 mental models that separate strategic thinkers from tactical workers. Now comes the integration. weaving these capabilities into a personal operating system that transforms not just your results, but your entire relationship with work, success, and time itself. The 7-lever system. Each mental model you've mastered represents a lever in your strategic operating system. Control Center gives you focus, the ability to identify and defend the few things that move everything else. Strong Position gives you stability, the foundation that lets you take calculated risks without inviting ruin. Own Initiative gives you momentum, the capacity to set tempo and force others into reactive mode. Second Order gives you foresight, the ability to see consequences before they unfold and choose moves that compound over time. Fast Loops gives you adaptability, the speed to learn truth faster than your competition and adjust accordingly. Bottlenecks gives you efficiency, the insight to focus improvement efforts where they actually matter. Asymmetric Bets gives you optionality, the portfolio approach that creates transformational upside with limited downside. These aren't separate techniques to be applied occasionally. They're interconnected capabilities that reinforce each other when used systematically. Center Control amplifies the impact of your asymmetric bets. Strong Position protects the gains from your fast loops. Initiative creates the momentum that makes second-order thinking actionable. The magic happens when these capabilities become automatic. When you're unconsciously applying strategic thinking to every decision, every opportunity, every challenge that crosses your path. The architect's advantage. You've shifted from being a firefighter to being an architect. Instead of reacting to problems as they arise, you're designing systems that prevent problems from arising. Instead of optimizing individual tasks, you're optimizing the relationships between tasks. Instead of working harder, you're working from positions of leverage that make effort compound. This shift changes everything about your professional experience. Your days become calmer because you're operating from preparation rather than desperation. Your decisions become clearer because you have frameworks for evaluating options. Your results become more predictable because you're working with systems rather than against them. The architect's advantage compounds over time. Each system you build makes the next system easier to build. Each position you strengthen makes the next position easier to achieve. Each capability you develop makes the next capability easier to master. You stop feeling like you're constantly behind and start feeling like you're consistently ahead. You stop reacting to the market and start creating market conditions. You stop following other people's playbooks and start writing your own. The relationship multiplier. Strategic thinking doesn't just improve your individual performance, it transforms how others experience working with you. When you operate with clarity and cadence, people know what to expect from you. When you deliver predictably, they trust you with bigger opportunities. When you maintain momentum, they want to be part of what you're building. Your reputation becomes a force multiplier that attracts better talent, better opportunities, and better partnerships. People start seeking your opinion before making important decisions. They start including you in strategic conversations. They start trusting your judgment because your track record demonstrates that you see things others miss. This reputation effect creates a virtuous cycle. Better relationships create better opportunities. Better opportunities create better results. Better results create better relationships. The cycle accelerates over time, creating compound effects that far exceed what individual effort could achieve. The most successful people aren't just good at what they do, they're good at creating conditions where others want to help them succeed. Strategic thinking provides the clarity, consistency, and momentum that makes collaboration irresistible. The tempo setter's authority. When you consistently apply strategic thinking, something remarkable happens. You start setting the rhythm for your entire professional ecosystem. Instead of adjusting to other people's timelines, they start adjusting to yours. Instead of reacting to market changes, you start creating the changes that others react to. This tempo control gives you a different kind of authority, not the authority that comes from position or title, but the authority that comes from consistently being early, right, and ready. People defer to your judgment because your judgment has proven reliable. They follow your lead because your lead has proven profitable. You can say no to opportunities that don't align with your strategy without feeling guilty or anxious. You can protect your center without having to justify your priorities to others. You can make decisions based on long-term thinking without being pressured into short-term compromises. This authority isn't about dominance or control. It's about creating so much value that others naturally want to align with your direction. You become a gravitational force that attracts opportunities, resources, and talent. The compound curve. The most profound transformation happens in how effort translates to results. In the beginning, strategic thinking requires conscious effort and deliberate practice. You have to remember to apply the frameworks. You have to force yourself to think second order. You have to discipline yourself to maintain fast loops. But as these capabilities become habitual, something magical happens. The systems start running themselves. The loops tighten automatically. The decisions simplify because you've developed pattern recognition that makes the right choice obvious. You reach a point where you're gliding where you used to grind, where you're creating leverage where you used to apply force, where you're orchestrating outcomes where you used to chase them. This isn't about working less. It's about working from a position where your effort compounds instead of dissipating, where each action builds on previous actions instead of starting from zero, where your time buys freedom instead of just paying bills. The compound curve explains why some people seem to achieve exponential results with linear effort. They're not working harder. They're working from positions of accumulated leverage that make their effort multiply. The optionality explosion. As your strategic capabilities mature, you accumulate options at an accelerating rate. Each successful center control creates new leverage points. Each strong position enables new risks. Each initiative generates new relationships. Each second-order insight reveals new possibilities. These options have value even when you're not exercising them because they preserve your ability to capitalize on future changes. You can be patient and selective about which opportunities to pursue because you have alternatives. You can wait for the right moment, the right partner, the right market conditions. The person with many options can afford to be strategic about which ones to exercise. They're not forced to take the first opportunity that comes along because they have others available. They can optimize for upside instead of just avoiding downside. This optionality explosion creates what venture capitalists call option value, the mathematical worth of having choices available even when you're not currently using them. Option value compounds because options create more options, and the person with the most options usually wins. The first move protocol. All of this transformation begins with a single decision. Which center lever will you choose to protect and develop first? This isn't about finding the perfect lever. It's about finding one lever that meets the high-impact, high-control criteria and committing to defend it systematically. Block 30 minutes daily to work on this lever before checking messages, attending meetings, or responding to other people's priorities. This isn't negotiable time. It's the foundation that makes everything else possible. Protect it like you would protect your most valuable asset, because that's exactly what it is. Execute one first force move tomorrow morning, one irreversible action that advances your most important project before the world imposes its agenda on you. Log this action and its result. Repeat the next day, and the next. This daily discipline creates momentum that compounds over time. Each first force move generates data. Each data point improves your judgment. Each improved judgment creates better outcomes. Each better outcome creates more resources for bigger moves. The protocol is simple, but simplicity is what makes it sustainable. Complex systems fail under pressure. Simple systems adapt and endure. The strategic imperative. You now possess something rare and valuable, a systematic approach to thinking and acting strategically. You understand how to identify leverage points, build defensive positions, create momentum, anticipate consequences, compress learning cycles, focus improvement efforts, and structure asymmetric opportunities. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. The frameworks in this book only create value when they're applied consistently over time. The mental models only generate results when they become mental habits. The world doesn't need another person who knows about strategy. It needs another person who thinks and acts strategically. It needs someone who can see systems instead of just symptoms. Someone who can create leverage instead of just applying force. Someone who can orchestrate outcomes instead of just hoping for them. That person can be you, but only if you choose to make it so. The choice is binary. Continue optimizing for activity or start optimizing for leverage. Continue reacting to other people's priorities or start creating priorities that others react to. Continue working harder or start working from positions that make effort compound. The tools exist. The principles are proven. The only variable is your commitment to applying them consistently. Refuse drift. Choose the center. Make the move. Small today, massive tomorrow. Compounding begins with one clean step. You've got the playbook. Now prove it works. The transformation starts now.